All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Fullerton. I am the founder of Fullerton Strategies, a digital marketing group. And I want to I want to just welcome you all here to this discussion about all things LinkedIn, everything that's happened this year, and what's going to happen in 2025. I have two LinkedIn pros, two of my buds from the old social app, Post Social, which Becca and I, before we came on, we're talking about that has been 2 years already, which seems absolutely bonkers that it has come and gone and potentially being arisen again in a slightly different format, but we'll see how that goes. But anyways, I want to have my guests introduce themselves first before we get started. So I am going to turn to the person on my right, which is Becca. So you're up first.
Hey everyone, I'm Becca. I am a chief of communications and have really only doubled down on LinkedIn in the past year or so, but I have a lot of learnings to share with you all. And just by way of background, I work in B2B tech and, advise tech companies and work in enterprise tech, building people's brands and building corporate brands. So this is definitely my jam.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And even though we've known each other for 2 years, this is the first time we've actually talked to each other face to face.
Which
Is it really?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? I
What?
can't believe it. I feel
Wow.
like I know both of you, like we're besties, but
I know. It's
yeah.
crazy. Well, Liam, why don't you go ahead next and then we'll dive into it.
Sure. So my name's Liam Darmody. I'm the founder of Liam's Brand Stand. I spent the first 2 decades of my career working in sales operations at technology startups, sort of similar industries to Becca, less on the cybersecurity side, more on B2C, B2B. And in 2020, I started posting content on LinkedIn more intentionally and building a network and a community here, mainly just because I was inside with a toddler and an infant and my wife, and they got tired of talking to me. So I needed to find other conversations to have online. And that's where I started spending time on LinkedIn and Clubhouse and really developed a passion for this platform and the relationships you can build on it and the opportunities that you can manifest. And so in 2022, 23, a company I was with had been acquired, and I decided I was going to pivot my career and go full on to training other people on how to build their brands here. So that is what I do. And I spend entirely too much time on the platform. I geek out about it all the day long, but I'm just going with it because it's what I like. So I'm excited to be here and share some stuff with you.
Liam, I kind of refer to you as the mayor of LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You are kind of the guy. So I'm super glad that we're doing this. And I realized I didn't really introduce myself. I kind of just kicked off. This is what happens when you get somebody who's not an official moderator to do these things. But just really fast. So I've been in digital marketing for 20 years. No one has been able to prove me wrong. I think I started the first ever social media account for a global brand, which was on MySpace in 2005.
Wow.
If anyone can prove me wrong, please do it because I keep claiming credit for it.
Well, then we should call you a social elder at this point.
I know. I prefer OG, but elder, if you really want to make me feel old, that's okay.
More respectful.
I've worked in the nonprofit, political, and business world over that time. Worked for a lot of big brands. I was on President Obama's first presidential campaign, and I was in his administration for 5 years. I was chief digital officer for the state of New York, and I was also a VP of marketing at WeWork before I started my own agency, Fullerton Strategies. So that is so you've got decades and decades of experience here. So I think hopefully we'll learn a lot from this cruise. So anyways, Becca, you had massive growth on LinkedIn this year. I think we were talking before, you gained about 20,000 followers, which puts you at about 26, 27. So obviously a lot of growth this year. I just would love to hear from you for a few minutes about what you did and what you found was working and anything else.
So I get the question a lot, like, what's your secret sauce? I do not have a secret sauce, but I have, I think, developed some insight over the last year. And just for background, so everybody knows, about exactly a year ago, December of last year, I was like, you know what? Personal brand is obviously becoming a bigger thing. I have been spending years convincing the executives that I work with to spend more time on LinkedIn, not just LinkedIn, on social media in general, thought leadership in general, whether that's writing bylines for the media or whatever, because people buy from people and not from brands, right? So I decided last year, you know what? I'm an executive. I can be my own proof of concept, right? I can show executives what this looks like by just doing it for myself. So I made that kind of my resolution, and I started in January of last year. And I started writing about communication stuff, leadership stuff, the things that I was working on every day. And it resonated, right? So I went from, I think it was around 4,000 followers to, I think I'm at 27,000 now. So 4,000 in January, 27 now. And that's completely organic. I'm not selling anything, right? But here are my kind of, how did Becca grow so fast? Authenticity, everything, right? And I show up as I am. I speak to people on LinkedIn the way I speak to you guys, or the way I speak to my team, or the way I speak to my friends, because I decided, instead of having this view of, well, everybody I've ever worked with and know and went to school with is on LinkedIn judging what I say, I'm going to pick one person and I'm going to talk to them. And who I talk to are my team. I talk to the people that I work with. And those are the people who I'm writing posts for, because I know how they feel. They are dealing with the same struggles I'm dealing with. So I talk about those things. And that's what resonated. And what I realized, now I can tell if I post something that's like a picture of me and something I did last week, I might get 5,000 impressions. I know that. If I post something about communications pain points and I say the quiet part out loud, I say the thing that everyone's thinking but nobody's saying, that post is going to get me 250,000 impressions. And that's because I'm saying something relatable, and I'm saying it in a way that other people want to say, and either they don't feel comfortable saying or they don't have the words to say it. So instead, they comment on my post and say, "Oh my God, this is exactly how I feel." Or they repost it and say, "Becca said what is in my brain." And that's why those posts have become viral, so to speak. And that's where I get my followers. So I went from having 4,000 followers that were mostly cybersecurity and a few comms people and neurodivergent interested people, because I talk about having ADHD. And suddenly I gained 20,000 followers in the communications, marketing, HR space, because I was talking to those people. And that is everything. So I don't know if I have a secret sauce, but it is show up as you are, say the quiet part out loud, and just keep showing up, right? Like, just keep doing it, because you will find your audience, or they'll find you, but you have to just keep showing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and the authenticity part is so important here, right? And like, when I read your posts or I read Liam's posts, I can hear, even though I had not actually heard your voice until
Yeah.
I knew like that it was you, because you were speaking authentically. You're not doing something like, going into ChatGPT and asking it to spit out an answer, right? Which there's been a lot of backlash to. Like, I hear your voices when you speak. And then, obviously you've had tremendous growth and tremendous success. A lot of people are going to ask, how often are you posting? Do you have a plan? Do you like map it out? Like, how does that work? Because I'll be honest, I have not done as well as I did in the first year with my stuff. And part of it was just the time with having clients and things like that. So how do you do it from a mechanical?
That's a super fair question also, because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and it is a labor of love. I am not making money off of it, but I am I'm doing the seed work towards bigger payoffs in the future, right? Will it make it easier for me to get a job? Maybe. Will it make it easier for me to get contract work? Probably. Will it make it easier for me to get event speaking? For sure. But do I have a strategy for this for myself? Not really. And I think that's kind of fun. That's what's fun about doing it for yourself versus doing it for somebody else. If I was doing it for somebody else, I would have to have a very concrete strategy. I'd have to be able to show them, this is what I expect we will do with this strategy. These are the results. With me, I'm just throwing shit at the wall and hoping that it sticks, right? I'm like, okay, my goal in January was to just start posting regularly. Then it turned into, I'm going to post every day. Then it turned into, I'm going to see what happens if I post 2 times a day. There was a month I was posting 3 times a day, just testing and trying things out. The thing is I was spending 5 hours a day on LinkedIn. And I think that's where the trade-off comes, is like, if you spend the time on LinkedIn, yeah, you'll see more growth, just like anything else. If I spend time learning how to play guitar, I will get better at playing guitar. So it comes down to that. And it's also interest. I like writing. I'm good at writing. I like writing in my own voice because that's easy for me. And I think that makes it easier for me to show up here every day versus somebody who doesn't like writing. I could see that being like pulling teeth to show up here and write a post every day. And I don't know, it makes it easier for me that I am kind of a open vocal person, that I just take what's in my brain and throw it on LinkedIn, and that works. But not everybody has the ability to make their inner monologue match what is on a screen. And so that's where ChatGPT comes in. And that's where I think people are losing their voices because they're over polishing, right? They're trying to make this perfect thing that they think other people will resonate with. What they've done is they've completely erased their voice from the copy. And I think for me, like you said, you could hear me talking. I've always been like that. Like in my text messages, you can hear me talking. And I think that is what sets my writing apart from other people and maybe why it resonates with people. And then, of course, I just saw somebody made a comment about my love of the Oxford comma. My love of the Oxford comma and the M dash has also earned me probably 10,000 of my followers. Let's be honest. It's just Oxford comma fan people.
I do see when you post about that, it does very well. So
that's my other hot tip. Post about Oxford commas. It'll get you 25,000 impressions at least.
Well, and actually, will you everything from once a day to 3 times a day and in between? Before I turn to Liam, I'm curious, what did you find actually worked for you?
That's I'm still testing this. Okay. I do think twice a day is where my sweet spot is. And I try to mix it up with like a thought leadership piece and something just either topical or personal or news or, whatever, a Schitt's Creek gif, because I love Schitt's Creek gifs. But the twice a day, I'm hitting same but different audiences, right? Or I'm hitting same but different moods. And I think that actually has gotten me more. So I used to average like 6,000 to 10,000 views every 90 days on my profile, whatever that metric is. You know that LinkedIn tells you how many people have viewed your profile in 90 days. I'm like at 38,000 views in the last 90 days now. And it's the twice a day, I think, is getting me more people landing on my profile and being like, who is this person? And why are they in my feed all of a sudden? Why are they suddenly showing up a lot? And I think that the twice a day has made a difference. And I've had, since I started posting 3 times a day in August, and then September twice a day, since September twice a day. And I have had more than half of my impressions for the year since September. So I'm at like, I don't know, 12 or 13 million impressions for the year. And 7 million of them have been since September. So acceleration.
Since September. So we're talking 3 months, you've had half.
And that's when I started posting twice a day. Yeah.
Well, Liam, I'm going to turn to you because for those of you who don't know Liam, Liam is somebody that trains many, many people on how to use LinkedIn and how to use it effectively in their voice. I'm curious, Liam, since we did this actually a year ago, it's not to the day, but it was pretty close. I'm curious what has changed in the last year, and what are you seeing with your clients as far as what's working and what's not?
Well, things are always changing. That's the only constant. I know that's cliche, but it's very true. I think LinkedIn is clearly very invested in turning this into a community at this point. I think they're shying away from the creator-led community necessarily because they're doing away with that term creator. They, sunset creator mode and just rolled it out to everybody. And so, I think you're starting to see a lot more of that. I saw a conversation with the chief product officer, Tomer Cohen, who said that they basically took 2 million people on LinkedIn and started treating them kind of differently than everybody else on the platform, so that they could test and see if the mechanics that they wanted to tweak would work effectively. And what ended up happening was those 2 million people really started to connect, really started to build relationships. You started to see a lot of community building. And what was interesting to me is they have the luxury of just pulling out a subset of 2 million people and being like, we're just going to run this test over here. And then everything else stays the same. Like, talk about a luxury for a software company. But the thing that was most interesting to me is that they are tweaking and thinking about how to do it. Because if you think about it, LinkedIn has tried to get people commenting on LinkedIn and creating here for almost 8 years now. Like 2017 was when I started to notice There was a group of influencers who were, very much promoted by the LinkedIn platform. They were talking about it all the time. Morgan Ingram was there, Michaela Alexis, a lot of these folks, Goldie Chan. These were all people who were like the first version of the creator model. Still premature, right? There's that LinkedIn stigma. People are nervous about going out there and putting their voice out there. What are people going to think about me, etc. Didn't stick. I started to see it again around 2020, 2021, and now even more than ever, like you're seeing that they're doubling down on this, and video is obviously the biggest, I think, change on the platform, especially in the last probably 3 to 4 months. They rolled out that unique video beta feed, and they're now full blown. Right now they have like a For You page, essentially a videos for you tab. And that is, I think, the biggest thing in a world where we question a lot of what we see and the authenticity and the validity of what we see. I think video is increasingly going to become essential to conveying the message that you want to convey and building trust with your audience. So I'm leaning very heavily in that direction myself. I'm encouraging a lot of my clients to do it. It's interesting to see the feedback and the results. I mean, some of my clients who are C-levels and VPs at organizations are a little more hesitant to do that than the founders who can kind of be freewheeling and do whatever they want. So I'm having a lot of fun with the latter half, and the first part I'm trying to convince them to take that leap of faith. But I think, Becca has done a fantastic job just proving what can happen if you just are unabashedly yourself on the platform and talking about the things that you're passionate about, right? She's a communications executive. I know tons of communications executives, but I don't know any of them as well as I know Becca, because Becca puts herself out there, and that's what we relate to. So that is what I think people need to lean into more, is just stop worrying about the judgment that you might receive. Like, instead of assuming that people are going to think badly of you, assume the opposite. Assume they're going to like you and find what you have to say valuable. And if they don't, they can unfollow, they can scroll past. It's not a big deal. But humans are funny. We tend to self-doubt. And so I think that's the thing that people need to get out of the way of.
I have a question for you, Liam, because you said something and that I agree with. I think 2024 was like the year of the personal brand on LinkedIn. It went from being like LinkedIn guru juice to like more of like telling your own story and having the people be like, this isn't LinkedIn content. And you're like, but it is LinkedIn. The way I look at it is, if I would show up at work this way, I can show up at LinkedIn this way. I tell my
100%.
personal stories to my friends at work. I talk about, I have bad days, I have good days, all of the above, right? Do you think the little yellow badges actually got everybody out there stepping outside their comfort zone and doing this, and that is part of what increased the personal brand wave on LinkedIn this year?
Maybe
that's what got me like really like motivated, because it got to gamify something, right? I got to earn the thing, and then once I earned it, I was over it. But I had already started doing it, so I was there.
Yeah, I do think that was actually a pretty smart move on their part, because I think the biggest struggle that people have on LinkedIn is they don't know what to write. They just don't. And so the ability to see collaborative articles and be prompted about something specific to your industry kind of took away that initial, well, what do I say, right? They're asking you for your opinion, so just respond, right? So I think it definitely could have. I think as is to be expected, all the growth hackers were like I saw people with like 85 different top voice badges, and it's like, well, you're not a top voice in all of those things, right? So in typical fashion, I think LinkedIn didn't necessarily think about how quickly people would abuse that. But I think at the same time, even those that did abuse it, like, it's a small subset of people. We're still at under 10% folks creating content here on a weekly basis, supposedly. So there's plenty of room for growth and opportunity here. But I think those did do wonders for getting people on here. I think the other thing is like X. Everybody's still trying to find an X replacement, right? Some people find that LinkedIn is a good place for them to do that. Others don't, and they want to go somewhere else. So I think that combination of things definitely added a lot of value.
Yeah.
And just the impressions, like, I think LinkedIn is being a lot more generous about impressions with folks who are embracing the platform the way they want them to be embracing the platform and are relatively new, right? Because people like me, they know I'm posting every day or once or twice a day, probably. So they don't necessarily have to worry as much. But, if somebody like Becca, who's a C-level communications person, you know, she's putting content out there, make sure that it gets in front of people so that Becca is inspired and wants to do more of this, right? I think they're wising up to the fact that they need to start treating certain folks with more attention than others.
Yeah.
They really should find the ADD folks, because they just need to give us a little bit of dopamine and we'll just keep on showing up. Just
Yeah.
keep dropping it,
Uh-huh.
There you go.
Well, I'll give you, Liam, that's a really good point. And I'll give you an example of another social platform that isn't doing this, which is suffering right now, which is Threads. There is a whole issue right now on Threads with people are not growing, and it's the people that are really, it's that 10%, right? And probably on Threads, it's probably even lower. It's like that 1% that is always on and always providing content. Like essentially 6 to 8 months ago, they changed their algorithm to basically move towards engagement rather than growth, which is good. But when you are, let's say, a power user and you're not seeing any growth, you start to look for other places to go, because the point, overall, especially if you're in a business world, is to reach more people, to have more influence on what you are doing. And so I think that's partially why you're right. Like LinkedIn is doing better and Threads is sort of stalled out, is because they are trying to reward those people, because those people doing that, like Becca and you, means that when people come, there is content of value to consume. And so I think that's really smart on them, but it's clear that not everybody is following that same rule, and it's hurting them.
And like Liam touched on earlier, the community aspect is huge. And I think that LinkedIn has figured out how to help kind of encourage the community aspect, which is you juice the posts that have more comments, right? So that you start to create the posts that have nested comments are getting more visibility, and then that increases engagement. And so you are starting to really create these little organic communities, like the three of us. I see you guys all the time everywhere, even if I'm not necessarily engaging with your content, because LinkedIn is figuring out how to do the algorithm to make the people who are engaging with their communities. And I think Threads hasn't figured that out. It's very much like you see what you follow and random things. And I don't know. I do think that the social media, everything that's embracing communities, marketing, everyone who embraces the community aspect of the internet is going to win in the next decade or whatever, because that's the next phase of, we don't want to buy from brands. We don't even necessarily want to buy from individuals. We want to know from the people that we trust that they're the ones who have the information that we need. And so how do we harness that? And then how do we create spaces where people can create their own communities without feeling like dad is in the room telling them how to be,
Well, and I think the other benefit that LinkedIn has over the others is that there are no anonymous accounts. And somebody asked if some of the actions of some of the other accounts has strengthened LinkedIn. And I think was mentioning X and how toxic it is there. And yes, I think part of the reason that LinkedIn has really grown since the whole X implosion is the fact that people don't want to be yelled at all day long. They want to have real meaningful conversations and not worry about 25 trolls coming at them and telling them how terrible they are, even though they don't know who they are. And generally, and I'm a man, so Becca, there's a different dynamic for women on any platform, but from my personal experience, and I think you've actually written about this, it's partially the reason I was comfortable saying that, but it is just a more pleasant experience.
For sure.
And
if it is unpleasant, other people call it out and LinkedIn stops it. So it isn't this long tail of I have to go block everybody who's harassing me. It's I can get help when somebody is harassing me, right? There is a way to put it into it, which means that it's an adult platform. And I think for some of us, we want to have an adult platform where it isn't here where we're just airing all of our grievances and talking shit about people and whatever. There are other places for that, but it is a place where you can have real conversations that are respectful, and you can have disagreements with people that don't devolve into name calling, because like you said, they're not anonymous, or they're not supposed to be anonymous. And realistically, most people are tied to a job or some other way that people can track you down and shame you for being a dick online. Be a dick online. I do think there's like white space somewhere, and I don't know if it's LinkedIn or what, for people to capitalize on this growing desire for more community. And I don't know who's going to be the winner in that. I think LinkedIn has an opportunity, as long as they don't overdo the AI thing where we lose everyone's voices because everyone's just hitting yes, AI my content, and I don't know. I'm babbling now.
Yeah, well, I actually want to ask Liam about this because there's some questions in the chat that are relevant to this. And last year when we were talking, there was a lot of discussions about people kind of gaming the system and these pods, engagements, and stuff. And Liam, I had personally on my feed seemed to have seen a lot less of that. I don't know if you have seen that as well, because someone just mentioned like, how are we going to get a handle on this, because it still is an issue. But I'm curious from your perspective if that has gotten better, or if we're still battling the same challenges that we did a year ago.
I think engagement pods are always going to be something that is part of social media. I think the thing that makes it so challenging on LinkedIn and why it's such a divisive topic is because there are so many people who are here because we want to be authentic. We want to build relationships and connections. And then there are people who just want to grow as quickly as possible and have the vanity metrics and use that quote unquote credibility to validate whatever they're selling on the platform. Right. And I think that will continue to be an issue. Although I think one of the things that I've noticed in the last few months, especially, is LinkedIn is definitely changing the way that we see how our posts are distributed. So it's a much slower build now, right? It used to be there was this talk of a golden hour, and within that golden hour, if you got as many comments as you could, like that determined how far and wide your post was going to go over the course of the day. That's why pods were so effective, because everybody hops on in the first 30 minutes to an hour. They leave a bunch of comments that tricks the algorithm, and then that goes. So that, I think, is something they're trying to combat by making it a lot slower distribution of your post. I've noticed that there are some posts that I have 25, 30,000 impressions on that have 50% of the engagement of something that I got 10,000 impressions on. So there's not, like, as analytical as I am, and as long as I've been here, I cannot crack that nut. I cannot find a correlation between reactions, comments, and impressions. And I've looked at it in 20 different ways. I just
I
can't.
have a theory. I have a new theory.
What is it? Go for it. Let's hear it.
Okay, because I'm with you, and like I'll have something that has 10 times the number of comments and likes and gets way fewer impressions. If people who don't usually comment on your post comment on your post, I think that gives you a huge boost. So
Yeah.
like we all comment on each other's posts all the time. That doesn't tell much to the algorithm. I think if rando stranger over here comments on it, suddenly that tells the algorithm, juice this post, even if you don't get as many likes and comments in the end.
That is an interesting theory.
I like that.
It also would be combating the bot, or not the bot, but the
Exactly.
engagement bot type thing, right? Like
Exactly.
the same people. Yeah, that's a really
And
interesting
it
theory.
shows that there's interest. Your content is interesting to more than just your friends. It's not just saying I got a new job post or I did this cool thing. Anyway, that's my theory, and we should test it. You guys should ask some random person who's never come. Ask a coworker's mom to comment on your and see what happens.
Yeah, I think I think they definitely know if a topic is trending in a specific function, like a bunch of people from marketing or branding or cybersecurity are talking about it. Because LinkedIn, I mean, I view LinkedIn as this gigantic signal farm, right? And they have so much information about who we are, what we do, and like how they can tie interest graphs between different people. And that, I think, is something they're taking into account now, right? They
Do
can
you
see.
think anybody knows how the LinkedIn algorithm works?
I
Because I don't
I
even
feel
think
like
people
it's
at
like
LinkedIn know.
I feel like it's top secret, compartmentalized,
With the
security
Coca-Cola
clearance or something
recipe.
like that. You're
Yeah.
basically like, there's fragments of people within who know fragments of the algorithm, but nobody actually knows the full thing.
Totally.
And that's why, honestly, at the end of the day, I'm always like, I'm fascinated by it because I'm curious and I like to understand how things work. but you can only spend so much time thinking about it, right? At the end of the day, you want to just show up, build connection with people, have good conversations, share your knowledge, and see what happens. I mean, this is the world's largest networking event. It's 24/7, 365. There's no geographic limitations. And you have the added benefit of knowing who's in the room before you go and start communication with them, right? You go to a networking event like old school days, like you walk in and you see people and it's like, all right, well, I'll go over there and I'll talk to that person. I'll go over there and talk. You might walk out of there with like 3 to 5 conversations that were worth having. And maybe one of them turns into an opportunity of some sort that's mutually beneficial. But like, here you can just see, and I view every post on this platform as a little micro networking event. And the comment section is where you have the conversation with people, and you can get on people's radar, and they're on your radar, and you just start to. And I feel like if you're zooming out and looking at LinkedIn from a million feet above, you just see little hordes of people kind of moving around from post to post to post to post, and you see a lot of similar faces in the comments, and that's how you build an affinity and relationships with each other. And that's what makes it so fantastic.
And I think that's a really interesting point for, the question at the top, which is always the thing for folks, right? It's like, how do I get started and how do I don't even know how to dive in. And what I tell folks is like, start commenting. Don't start with post. I mean, if you've got something, that's great. But like, go with the lower risk option of just, because if you put a comment in there and nobody engages with it, who cares, right? It's not like hurting you in any way, but you can actually grow just as well through commenting as you can from original post if they are thoughtful and further a conversation that's being had, right? Like we used to see, and this still happens sometimes because it's just human nature, but you're like, great, I agree, like thumbs up, like that isn't gonna do it, right? Like if you come with a perspective and from a point of respect, right? Also, because like no one wants to engage on this platform with negative stuff, but there is just monstrous opportunity there, and then that helps to train you for when you are writing your own posts that your followers are going to see.
And from a communications perspective, so I spent my entire career looking for opportunities for spokespeople at my company, right? Media opportunities, podcasts, bylines, blogs, whatever. LinkedIn event speaking, right? LinkedIn gives you your own platform. You don't have to go seek out those opportunities, right? You can speak about whatever you want, whenever you want. You can write articles whenever you want. And guess what? My doing that has gotten me more media coverage in the last year in top tier media than 15 years of hardcore communications efforts. And that's not because I was bad at my job. I'm kick-ass at my job, by the way. It's because it's changed. The game is changing, and reporters want sources right now, right? They want to talk about something right now. And if they can go find somebody who has an interesting perspective on LinkedIn or somebody who they've seen speak live, an event organizer might say, hey, that person has a great perspective. I want her to speak at my event. That is what is happening to me now, just from showing up on LinkedIn. And again, I'm my own proof of concept. Now I can take this to other execs and be like, look at how much easier it would be for you to get a keynote slot somewhere if everybody already knows you and everybody already knows how you speak and the kind of perspective and personality that you bring to the stage. So I just feel like, and we talk about what are going to be the predictions for 2025. I think 2025 is going to be the year that like executives finally stop sleeping on LinkedIn. And people talk about founder brand. I think it's going to be founder brand. It's going to be CEO brand. It's going to be employee brand and customer helping your brand and all of the things, but it's going to be very much individual people telling different parts of a brand story. And that's what gets people to give a shit about your company, not your company spouting a new product thing or an exec getting covered in the New York Times. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, and Liam, I'm curious to hear this, people also ask a lot about, well, how much should we be doing on, say, the CEO's personal page compared to the business account that is on LinkedIn? And what I am telling folks, and I'm hoping you guys are agreeing, that the personal is far more effective than those business pages. I mean, those business pages, the reach is throttled for a reason because they want you to spend money on their ads, which I understand. And it's, I think, a totally fine and reasonable thing to have those pages and use them. But we are, as Becca, you were saying, like The CEOs are the cheerleaders for the brand now and need to be. And if you're going to have a strategy on LinkedIn, and Liam, I'm sure this, I'm curious what you talk to your clients about, but like, really changing how much time and energy you're focusing on one and really moving it to the personal voice, I think is a far more successful strategy for the brand that then sells more products down the line.
No
So,
question.
yeah.
And it gets
100%.
more people that want to talk to you. And that is what the goal is, right? Is more customers, more media, more analysts, more whatever. And people like to talk to people that they like and know. Like we said, we have never really met each other, yet I know you guys, right? And
Right.
that I would recommend you to anybody. And I don't even know you, but I do. And I just think like people are sleeping on this opportunity and they're going to networking events to meet people and expand their networks. It's like your network is on your computer right here.
Yeah.
You do have to put in the effort. You can't just like show up and be like, hey, people come to me. But it's easier than going to an event. I'll tell you that much. You don't have to put on
100%.
nice clothes.
Yep. Totally. Yeah, you both hit the nail on the head in a number of different ways. I think, my belief is that LinkedIn is essentially one of the best top of funnel marketing mechanisms that you can have in business these days. I think that you are definitely going to see, if you look at the CEO of Hootsuite, which is a social media scheduling and analytics platform, so naturally they're probably going to be, thinking more avant-garde about go-to-market strategy for social media, but she's crushing it right now on the platform. She's doing tons of video. She's talking about this, executives posting more on LinkedIn regularly. It's almost makes me wonder if they're building a product around it because they want to go to market with it. It would make a lot of sense for them to do that. I think the power, everybody can be in marketing now, right? Everybody's got social, like LinkedIn has this weird sort of stigma around it where it's like, okay, well, you're only supposed to connect with people that you've worked with and like and trust. But then there's also the follower component, and they're saying you should start posting, and there's a lot going on this platform. And I think you will start to see more and more employers, specifically the ones that are, in the smaller to medium-sized business range, right? They don't have the risk profile that a large Fortune 100 has by just opening the floodgates and having everybody start talking about things. But they can get a lot of bang for their buck if they encourage their executive team and their employees to just start talking openly. And I think one of the things that they need to think about, and I talk to CEOs about this all the time. I had a CEO that I was talking to him and his sales team, and he's like, "What happens if I do this and I invest in your training, and then they just start posting, and then they get recruited and they leave?" And he's like, "Then I look like the biggest fool ever." And I was like, "Fair. That's a fair question and a fair concern, but is that the real problem? Like, you hire talented people, they're getting recruited regardless. Recruiters are going to recruit. So the question
And
you should
use
be
your
asking."
employees while they're your employees, right?
The question you should be asking is, if they do get recruited, do they have enough reasons to stay? That is a problem you should be focusing on. And the second thing is, I think that a lot of employers need to think about employees more like sports teams think about athletes. You're signing them to a contract. They're going to be with you for a little while, 2-3 years, 10 years if you're really good at baseball. And you're going to try and get the most of them while they're with you, which includes leveraging their network, which includes leveraging their ability to post on social media in a creative way that is enticing to other people. And when they're ready to leave, they're going to leave, and that's fine. Like, they'll go, whatever, but let them build their brand, because that is part of that whole cultural affinity thing that I was talking about. If you encourage your employees to build their personal brands, they will feel like you were an awesome employer because you trust them and you want to see them be themselves, and you don't worry about what they're going to say. You're not micromanaging them like toddlers, right? That, in my opinion, is going to be, maybe not next year, but the year after, a really big thing here.
Treating employees like adults. Yes. No question. This is like the hill I will die on. I can't deal with employers that, like baby, you can't talk about that on social. It's like, what? Yes, I'm a grown ass adult. I can talk about whatever I want on social.
Right.
But that's like saying, like, I hear this exact same thing all the time, by the way, Liam, and it drives me nuts because it's like, that's like saying, okay, we're not going to build the CEO's thought leadership because they might go to another company. And then we did all this work for nothing. And it's like, that's bananas. Of course, you're going to use your CEO for thought leadership.
Mhm.
Employees are no different. They tell a different story, right? They tell a cultural story. They tell a why this place doesn't suck, why I'm the only non-miserable one of my friends, or whatever it is. That matters. Like, I don't see how employer brands cannot see why what their employees say to their friends impacts their brand overall, whether that's recruiting, whether that's retention, whether that's people buying their products or whatever. No one is saying, well, I'm not going to train the CEO because they might
Right.
leave. Why would you say that about your employees?
Well,
Use your employees.
and also, like, what a great, recruitment tool if you do create
Totally.
a environment that people thrive and enjoy being in. That is just going to help you more. So I guess what I would recommend to companies who treat their employees poorly, maybe you shouldn't do this, because that won't come across well. But like, it also starts to be a signal to all of the great talent that is out there. And by the way, people are now like, people who are really good at their jobs have lots of choices now because of so much remote work. Like, developing and fostering a great place to work is like, it's just going to pay more and more dividends. So people who ask that question, Liam, and I think you answered it perfectly, but it's like, that actually suggests a different problem that has nothing to do
I
with.
have a really good example of how to paint this picture. So 2 companies ago, our brand was about flexibility and treating employees like adults and whatever. And I'm neurodivergent and I talk about that a lot. And so we did a survey about neurodiversity and I started talking about it on LinkedIn all the time. And guess what? The recruiters started pinging me all the time. Hey, people are applying because they want to work somewhere that embraces neurodiversity. And like, that became this accidental, awesome thing. I haven't been at that company in a year and change now. They still get people who want to work at that company because they embrace neurodiversity and they were out. And I'm like, I started that trend, but I'm gone. I am not part of that company, but that brand remains part of that company. That matters, right? Like, that is a significant thing, that they can recruit people that they couldn't recruit before because of an employer brand that an employee was out there talking about, who no longer even works at the company. And I just think, like, it's an
Yeah.
example, but it's one of a billion of them. Like, every touch point for people shapes their perception of you and your brand and whatever. And everyone who's not shaping their own brand means that other people are shaping your brand
Doing it for
in
them.
their own brains,
Yeah.
right?
And I think there's 2 things that are important to touch on there too. One is, we hire employees in part because of their personality. We think that it's additive to our culture. We hire them because we trust that they'll work well with our other employees, and we trust that they'll work with our clients or our customers, um, without worrying about what they're going to say to those constituents. But somehow, when you talk about posting on LinkedIn, it's like, well, they're just going to start showing pictures of themselves ice lugeing on the weekends. And it's like, no, they're not going to do that, because as we talked about, LinkedIn is a different platform. It's a professional platform. Your real name is associated with your profile. Your jobs are associated with your profile. And more or less, you view this platform as a place of opportunity. So if you are starting to say things that might be inflammatory and maybe put some people off, like, that's going to come back to bite you potentially. So you're being on your best behavior and you're having civil discourse about business and other things in your industry. And I think that that is one of the primary things that prevent, or should prevent, some of those fears about, well, what will they say if we unleash them on LinkedIn? They're not going to say anything. That, like, if anything, you need to help them figure that out. And that's the second piece that I think is critical to the employer brand becoming prominent on the platform. And that is, right now, it's like, who owns employer brand? Is it HR? Is it marketing? Is it comms? I personally think that should live in marketing and communications, because that is the mindset that marketing and communications people have, is how to convey value through a story and how to convert new prospects, new clients, etc. You're always thinking about conversion, right? But a lot of HR teams want to own the marketing narrative and the recruiting story and the talent marketing function. And I just think that is probably a bad idea. I think you want to have the marketing and comms team own it and have them building a strategy that basically brings the employees into the fold and says, here's a bunch of things that we as a company value. Here's what we think. Here's how we talk. Here's our core brand strategies. Like train
It's
your team like you would train executives on
exactly. It's your
communications.
employees are another audience,
Right.
right? It's like, and that's why it needs to sit with comms. It's like you
Right.
have all of your audiences and you have your messages, and you know how to package up those messages for each of your audiences. And to your point, people who are not leveraging their employees are sleeping on this massive important audience and their networks. Like, no one's coming, say you have 10,000 followers on your brand. How many followers do your employees have? Way more, and in different places. And I don't know. If you can arm your employees to say things in the way that they should be articulated, you're just amplifying everything by a zillion. Like I cannot understand. And there's tools for it now. It's so easy to do. It's just like, there's no reason why employers should not be empowering their employees on social media.
Well, and also the posts from employees are so much more valuable than the posts from the brand account, right? Because frankly, like they're doing it on their own personal accounts. Like,
and engagement rates are always like
way
5
better.
times higher. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, those brand pages are good so that people know that you exist.
Yeah.
But like,
they're a landing page. They're a place to land on if you need information, not a place to engage with on a daily basis.
Yeah, and have your team tag the company page so that people can go to it. But think about, like, mathematically, LinkedIn has 29 million followers on LinkedIn, which is hilarious. It should be a lot higher than that.
yeah.
They have 16,000 employees. If the average employee has 2,000 followers, which is probably not, it's probably a higher average than that, but say it's 2,000, that's 32 million impressions.
Exactly.
If they all post something, it's 32 million reach, right? And that's not including the networking effect and the retweets or reposts and things like that. And so the more you're leveraging the networks of people who are in the organization and letting them talk about, their professional experience, their skills, the things that they want to share with their professional network, the more you will see broader distribution and more trust for your organization. So I think it's just,
because it's
still
brand
so
things.
underutilized. Like there's still so much hesitation and nuance and nervous. And I think a lot of it has to do with, like, LinkedIn still has a bit of a brand identity crisis, right? They're trying to make sure that they're keeping the recruiters happy, the salespeople happy, like marketing and ad teams happy. And then there's the community component. Like there's so many different masters that LinkedIn has. How do you keep them all happy? It's very, very challenging, I think.
Well, and there's a flip side to this too that I'm sure you both agree with, is that it is one thing to sort of give the freedom to your employees to do this. It's another thing to try and force them.
Oh my God.
to do it, right? And
That's
I have had this experience at a few places where I have been asked to get everybody to do something. And the reality is that is a disaster, because you can't force people to do it, because first of all, the content will be terrible. And second of all, leave a bad taste. So I just want to make sure that the folks here know, like, either you have to create some sort of incentive structure, or it's so great there that they do it organically, but no mandates.
Authenticity counts in all realms on social. We all have a really sensitive bullshit meter. Even if you don't realize it, you have a very sensitive bullshit meter to stuff on social. And I think that we are now, with AI, all of us are really starting to feel the difference in what's real and what's not. And when you see a corporate post with 90 likes on it from all the employees, that means nothing to you, and it means nothing to the LinkedIn algorithm, I'm sure. So I want to bring something up that is kind of tangential to this, which is analytics, because we're talking about LinkedIn and all of the benefits and employees and whatever. But like, if we're using LinkedIn for brand marketing or personal brand building, we have crappy analytics. And so do we think that in 2025, LinkedIn is finally going to give creators and brand owners more tools so that we can do our jobs better?
Liam, I'm going to you because you.
Damn it, Liam.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think so. I mean, they did put a number of things in place that improved analytics in the last year, believe it or not. Like you can now see on your analytics how many comments you left in the last week, and
But why is that helpful? Like, why do I
it's
want to know how
not.
many comments I've left?
It's
Not how
not,
many. Yeah.
but it shows you that you and me are not their target audience.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is trying to get the people who never post to
Non-users.
start posting. They are like, we recommend you take 3 actions a week.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's Monday morning at
We have 300.
7:32 and I've done 30. So I am not their target audience. Same thing with impressions. Like, they know I'm going to keep posting if I get tons of impressions or not. So I am a lifer, a day-to-day person. So I think they're probably going to punt on analytics for the people who are creating now, because we're just here doing it regardless. And they'll have to probably build that out.
Why
when
did
people
they punish us then for using third-party tools?
That's I don't understand at all. I in 5 years, I've had my account restricted once, and it was 2 months ago. And I've never used any of the sketchy tools.
It was
I've
for
never,
analytics,
and I
right? Like,
think it was authored up because that was the only Chrome extension that I had that in any way manipulated LinkedIn.
yeah.
And so that was, that I agree. I think that they need to be providing more and better analytics, but I think that they're also still early enough as a user-generated content platform that they can get away with not doing that and will still show up.
Yeah, but they're clearly trying to become a user. Like, the video
Oh, yeah.
thing shows us that they want to be TikTok. You can't be TikTok without good analytics and
In
things for
theory.
the creators and paying your creators. Really, I mean,
Yeah.
no griping here, but it would be
No, I
nice
hear
if
you.
we made $1 once in a while.
I totally agree with that. I don't think that'll ever happen
No.
here. And I, but there
Good
are
thing
brands
this
that
is
are
where we
coming, right?
spend all of our effort.
There are a lot of brands that are coming and they're sponsoring posts.
Yeah.
I've worked with Notion, I've worked with Stan. Like, there's a lot of companies that are
I
waking
do
up
think
to it, but it's
the
still
micro
early.
influencer thing, I think, is going to be a trend next year. Like, I think that you and me, I think we're going to get more companies reaching out to us saying, okay, they have a large following on LinkedIn. This is a specific type of user audience that we want to tap into. I do think that like very niche kind of influencer marketing is going to kick up on LinkedIn, because there are all these creators who aren't making any money doing it. And there may be opportunities for inexpensive, high impact marketing campaigns for certain brands that don't have a lot of budget.
Well, I think, and you've hit on something that I talk about a fair amount. And for those of you who don't know, I was one of the white dude for Harris organizers in the campaign, which we don't talk a lot about politics on here. But so I was heavily involved in a group that was working to help elect Kamala Harris, which obviously did not happen. But we've done a lot of looking at, and this is applicable to brands, so I'll get to it in a second. But like, the reality is that the ecosystem for which brands, candidates, whoever can reach people is getting harder and harder. Like, the Harris campaign spent $1.4 billion on TV ads, and they lost every battleground state.
It's because we're so fractured, right? Like, everyone's in a different watering hole.
It is like, there's a whole other LinkedIn Live that we could have on this. But essentially, the traditional forms of reaching out to people are breaking. I mean, I saw there was a report that CNN, in their prime time, they were getting tens of thousands of in that 18 to like 45 demo. Well, you have had not TikTok, we can talk about TikTok too, but LinkedIn posts that get more than are watching CNN in prime time. And so I think that this micro influencer thing in particular, across all platforms, not just for not for nonprofits and political people, but also for brands, we're going to need to rely on people that have smaller niche audiences to get your products and your brand in front of them, because otherwise you are going to be lighting money on fire with paid advertising without having this piece too. So Becca, I 100% agree. I think
plus SEO is changing with AI stuff. Like, I do think that like finding people in their communities and being in the communities, not just accessing the communities, right? Being a part of the communities is what's going to work. And then maybe people like me who are in these communities, maybe that'll be a draw for an employer, right? Maybe they want to hire people who are already embedded in these communities, because it's like, hey, I'm going to have somebody on my staff who's full-time influencer in these. Like, that could be a really interesting future that I envision for sure, of it being a thing on a comms person's resume, that they are, not just good at building communities, but like being, I don't even know what you call that. Community infiltrators? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know, but I mean, I think it's real, and I think that companies, and this is, you know, it's a bit of a wild west right now, and I think, you know, the companies that jump on this stuff now, you're going to have a leg up, because in a year, everybody will get it and then go, oh my God, and then it's almost like you don't get any of that initial benefit of being early. It's sort of like us on Post. For a moment there was a lot of growth, and I think we got a whole bunch of followers that they tanked, but like people who jump on early onto trends tend to get that additional organic benefit.
And if you're building your brand now, in 3 years, your brand is going to have 3 years of growth, and everybody else is just going to be starting. So, you know, just start somewhere. You got to start somewhere. And I totally agree. Execs who start building brands now, they're the ones who are going to be leading brands in the future, because people are going to want to hire execs that already have following, influence, trust, all of that.
100%.
Totally agree.
100%. Well, we are at an hour, and I know we also have jobs that we need to do. I mean, that was about the fastest hour that I think I've spent in a long time. And it was also great to have so many people engaged in this conversation. I would just say for folks on here, connect with all three of us. You know, like we're all out there. Love to engage with you guys. If you have further questions, you know, maybe guys, we got to talk about doing something more regularly, because this kind of flowed pretty well, and it seems like people really got value out of it. So we'll have to chat on direct mail, or iMail here, which is, I'll finally get some benefit out of it, rather than people telling me they can book me 15 meetings a month.
I had someone tell me it was 1,000. So you're clearly getting the crap.
Well, I got to talk to that one then, because you know,
I'll send them your way.
Yeah. Yeah, please don't. I've got so many. I'm a inbox zero person. But not on that one.
Definitely not.
No way. So, but anyways, thank you, Becca. Thank you, Liam.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm glad. Thank you, everybody who's been tuning in. Follow us all, and if you have more questions, drop them in the chat. Maybe we can answer some stuff afterwards. But thank you, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.